The galaxy was a tapestry of light and shadow, a sprawling expanse where civilizations rose and fell like stars igniting and fading into the void. Among the countless species that dotted the cosmos, one name was whispered with a mixture of awe and dread: the ancient alien warrior. It was a relic of a bygone era, a being of incomprehensible power and mystery, whose very existence was a reminder of a time when empires stretched across galaxies and war was waged on scales unimaginable to the modern mind. The warrior had been dormant for centuries, sealed away in a fortress of alien design, guarded by a coalition of species who feared what might happen if it ever awoke. And yet, despite their vigilance, the unthinkable occurred. It began with a ripple in the fabric of spacetime, a disturbance so subtle that only the most advanced sensors detected it. By the time the galactic community realized what was happening, it was too late. The ancient alien warrior had awakened. Its emergence was not a slow, groggy stirring but a cataclysmic event. The fortress that had contained it for so long shattered like glass, its fragments scattering into the void. The warrior emerged, a towering figure clad in armor that seemed to drink in the light around it, its surface etched with runes that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Its eyes, if they could be called that, burned with a cold, ancient light, and its presence was like a weight pressing down on the minds of all who beheld it. Panic spread like wildfire. The warrior's first actions were swift and merciless. It moved through the nearest star system with a precision that defied understanding, dismantling fleets and obliterating defenses as though they were nothing more than toys. Its motives were unclear, its goals inscrutable. Some believed it sought revenge for the fall of its civilization. Others thought it was driven by a primal instinct to destroy. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: the galaxy had no defense against it. Attempts to communicate with the warrior were met with silence or violence. Diplomatic envoys were vaporized before they could utter a word. Military forces, no matter how advanced or numerous, were crushed beneath its might. The warrior's technology was beyond anything the modern galaxy had ever seen, its weapons capable of tearing through starships and planets alike. It was as if the warrior existed on a different plane of reality, untouchable and unstoppable. Amid the chaos, one voice dared to suggest a different approach. Dr. Alara Voss, a human xenohistorian, had spent her life studying the remnants of ancient civilizations. She had always been fascinated by the stories of the ancient alien warrior, seeing in them not just a tale of destruction, but a glimpse into a lost world. While others saw the warrior as a monster, Alara saw something else: a being shaped by its history, a relic of a time long past. She believed that if anyone could understand the warrior, it was her. Alara's proposal was met with skepticism and outright hostility. The Galactic Council, desperate for a solution, had little patience for what they saw as a naive and dangerous idea. "You want to talk to it?" one council member had scoffed. "It's a killing machine, not a diplomat." But Alara was undeterred. She had spent years piecing together fragments of the warrior's language and culture, and she was convinced that there was more to it than mindless destruction. She argued that the warrior's actions were not random but purposeful, driven by a logic that no one had yet understood. Her persistence paid off, though not in the way she had hoped. The council, out of options, reluctantly agreed to let her try. They provided her with a small, unarmed shuttle and a single escort, a tacit acknowledgement that they expected her to fail. Alara didn't care. This was her chance to prove that understanding could succeed where force had failed. The journey to the warrior's location was tense and fraught with danger. The shuttle's sensors picked up the wreckage of countless ships, a grim reminder of the warrior's power. Alara's escort, a seasoned pilot named Yarrick, was visibly nervous. "You sure about this, Doc?" he asked as they approached the warrior's last known position. "Once we're in its range, there's no turning back." Alara nodded, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen. "I'm sure," she said, though her voice betrayed a flicker of doubt. She had spent her life studying the warrior, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of facing it. As the shuttle drew closer, the warrior came into view, a towering figure silhouetted against the stars. Its armor gleamed with an eerie light, and its movements were slow and deliberate, as though it were waiting for something or someone. The shuttle's comm system crackled to life, and Alara's heart skipped a beat. The warrior was hailing them. She took a deep breath and activated the translator, her fingers trembling as she input the commands. The warrior's voice, when it came, was deep and resonant, filled with a weight that seemed to echo through the very fabric of space. It spoke in a language that was ancient and complex, its words layered with meanings that the translator struggled to convey. Alara responded in kind, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. She spoke of peace, of understanding, of the shared history that bound all beings together. The warrior listened, its head tilted slightly, as though considering her words. For a moment, it seemed as though her gamble had paid off. And then, without warning, the warrior attacked. Its weapon, a blade of pure energy, sliced through the shuttle's hull as though it were paper. Yarrick shouted a warning, but it was too late. The shuttle was crippled, its systems failing as it tumbled through space. Alara clung to her seat, her mind racing. She had been wrong. The warrior was not a being to be reasoned with. It was a force of nature, unstoppable and unyielding. As the shuttle spun out of control, Alara caught a final glimpse of the warrior. Its eyes, cold and unreadable, seemed to bore into her soul. And then darkness. The shuttle's alarms blared, a cacophony of sound that mirrored the chaos in Alara's mind. Smoke filled the cabin, acrid and choking, as the vessel spun wildly through the void. Yarrick fought to stabilize their descent, his hands flying over the controls with a desperate urgency. "We're losing power," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. "Brace yourself. This is going to be rough." Alara gripped the edges of her seat, her knuckles white. The shuttle shuddered violently as it entered the atmosphere of a nearby planet, the friction heating the hull to a fiery glow. Through the cracked viewscreen, she caught glimpses of a barren, rocky landscape rushing up to meet them. The impact was brutal, a bone-jarring collision that sent her slamming against her restraints. For a moment, everything went black. When she came to, the shuttle was eerily silent. The alarms had stopped, replaced by the faint hiss of escaping air. Alara groaned, her body aching as she unbuckled herself and stumbled to her feet. "Yarrick?" she called, her voice hoarse. There was no response. She found him slumped over the controls, a deep gash across his forehead. Her heart sank as she checked his pulse, weak but steady. He was alive but unconscious. She grabbed the emergency kit and tended to his wound as best she could, her hands trembling. The shuttle was in no condition to fly, and the planet outside was an unforgiving wasteland. But staying put wasn't an option. The ancient alien warrior was still out there, and if it decided to finish what it had started, they wouldn't stand a chance. Alara activated the shuttle's distress beacon, though she doubted anyone would come to their aid in time. She then gathered what supplies she could: a portable oxygen unit, a ration pack, and a handheld scanner, before slinging Yarrick's arm over her shoulders and dragging him out of the wreckage. The planet's surface was harsh, the air thin and cold, but she pressed on, driven by a determination she didn't know she possessed. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time blurred in the monotonous expanse of rock and dust. Yarrick regained consciousness briefly, muttering incoherently before slipping back into unconsciousness. Alara's strength was waning, her body pushed to its limits, but she refused to give up. She had come too far to fail now. It was the scanner that saved them. As they crested a ridge, the device pinged, indicating a structure ahead. Alara's heart leapt as she saw it. A massive, ancient edifice carved into the side of a mountain. Its design was unmistakable. It belonged to the same civilization as the warrior. Hope surged within her. If she could decipher its secrets, she might yet find a way to stop the warrior, or at least understand it. The entrance was a towering archway, its surface covered in the same runes that adorned the warrior's armor. Alara hesitated, her mind racing with possibilities. This place was a relic of a forgotten age, a treasure trove of knowledge that could change everything. But it was also a tomb, a place of death and despair. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The interior was vast and dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay. The walls were lined with intricate carvings, depicting scenes of war and conquest, of empires rising and falling. Alara moved cautiously, her scanner guiding her deeper into the structure. She found a chamber filled with strange devices, their purpose unclear. Among them was a console, its surface covered in glowing symbols. She approached it, her heart pounding. As she studied the console, a voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. It was the same voice she had heard on the shuttle, the voice of the ancient alien warrior. But this time it was not filled with menace. It was mournful, almost pleading. The words were still alien, but the tone was unmistakable. The warrior was not a mindless destroyer. It was a being in pain, driven by a purpose it could no longer remember. Alara's hands flew over the console, inputting commands based on her knowledge of the warrior's language. The symbols shifted and changed, forming patterns that she struggled to interpret. And then, suddenly, the chamber was filled with light. A holographic image appeared before her, depicting the warrior as it once was, a noble protector, a guardian of its people. The image shifted, showing the fall of its civilization, the betrayal that had left it alone and adrift. Alara's breath caught in her throat. She understood now. The warrior was not an aggressor. It was a victim, a relic of a tragedy that had consumed its world. The voice spoke again, and this time Alara understood. The warrior was searching for something or someone. It had been awakened by the disturbance in spacetime, and it believed that its people still lived, hidden somewhere in the galaxy. Its rampage was not an act of malice but a desperate attempt to find them, to fulfill its duty as a protector. Tears welled in Alara's eyes as she realized the truth. The warrior was not a monster. It was a lost soul, a being burdened by grief and guilt. And she, a mere human, had the power to help it. She activated the console's communication system, her voice steady as she spoke. "I hear you," she said, her words echoing through the chamber. "I understand your pain. Let me help you." For a moment there was silence. And then, the ground shook as the warrior entered the chamber, its massive form dwarfing everything around it. Its eyes, once cold and unreadable, now glowed with a faint warmth. It knelt before her, its head bowed, as though in submission. Alara reached out, her hand trembling as she touched its armor. It was warm, almost alive. "You're not alone," she whispered. "I'll help you find them. I promise." The warrior rose, its movements slow and deliberate. It turned and left the chamber, its footsteps echoing through the ancient structure. Alara followed, her heart filled with a strange mix of fear and hope. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She had changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same. The ancient alien warrior moved with a deliberate grace, its massive form casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Alara followed closely, her breath visible in the thin, cold air. The journey back to the shuttle was arduous, but the warrior's presence lent her a strange sense of security. It was no longer a threat, not to her at least, but the galaxy was still in peril, and the warrior's awakening had set off a chain of events that could not be undone. As they approached the wreckage, Yarrick stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He groaned, clutching his head as he tried to sit up. What happened?" he muttered, his voice weak. Alara knelt beside him, her hands steady as she checked his wound. "We crashed," she said softly. "But we're alive, and we're not alone." Jarrek's eyes widened as he saw the warrior looming behind her. He scrambled back, his face pale. "Alara, what the hell is that thing doing here?" "It's not what you think," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "It's not our enemy. Not anymore." She explained what she had learned in the ancient structure, her words measured and deliberate. Yarrick listened in stunned silence, his fear slowly giving way to disbelief. "You're telling me that thing is lost?" he asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "Yes," Alara said, "and we're going to help it." Yarrick shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "You've got a death wish, you know that? But if anyone can pull this off, it's you." He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on Alara for support. So, what's the plan? The plan, as it turned out, was fraught with uncertainty. The warriors' technology was beyond anything they had ever seen, but it was also ancient and unreliable. Alara spent hours studying the shuttle's systems, trying to integrate what little she could glean from the warriors' knowledge. It was a painstaking process, but slowly, the shuttle began to come back to life. The warrior watched in silence, its presence a constant reminder of the stakes at hand. When the shuttle was finally operational, Alara contacted the Galactic Council. The transmission was brief and to the point. "We have a solution," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "But we need your help. Meet us at the coordinates I'm sending you. And come in peace." The council's response was hesitant, but they agreed. The warriors' rampage had left them with few options, and Alara's plea was their last hope. As the shuttle lifted off, Alara felt a surge of determination. This was it, the moment that would define not just her life, but the fate of the galaxy. The meeting place was a neutral zone, a desolate moon on the edge of known space. The council's fleet arrived first, their ships forming a protective ring around the moon. Alara's shuttle landed in the center, the warrior following close behind. The tension was palpable as the council's representatives approached, their faces a mixture of fear and curiosity. Alara stepped forward, her voice carrying across the barren landscape. "This is the ancient alien warrior," she said, gesturing to the towering figure behind her. "It is not our enemy. It is a protector, a being driven by duty and grief. It seeks only to fulfill its purpose, to find its people and ensure their safety." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a stern-faced alien with scales that shimmered in the moonlight, stepped forward. "And how do you propose we help it?" he asked, his voice laced with skepticism. "By working together," Alara replied. "By using our combined knowledge and resources to locate the remnants of its civilization. By showing it that it is not alone." The council deliberated, their voices low and urgent. The warrior stood silently, its presence a constant reminder of the power it wielded. Finally, the scaled alien spoke again. "We will assist you," he said, his tone grudging. "But know this. If this creature turns on us, the consequences will be on your head." Alara nodded, her resolve unwavering. "Understood." The search began in earnest, a collaborative effort that spanned star systems and centuries of history. The warriors' knowledge, combined with the council's resources, yielded clues that had long been forgotten. They followed a trail of ancient artifacts and cryptic messages, each discovery bringing them closer to their goal. Along the way, Alara and the warrior formed an unlikely bond, their mutual respect growing with each passing day. But the journey was not without its challenges. The warrior's presence stirred fear and mistrust among the galactic community, and there were those who sought to exploit its power for their own gain. Alara and Yarrick found themselves navigating a web of intrigue and danger, their every move scrutinized by friend and foe alike. Yet through it all, they remained steadfast, driven by the belief that they were doing the right thing. The breakthrough came on a remote planet, its surface scarred by the remnants of an ancient battle. There, buried beneath layers of rock and time, they found what they had been searching for: a cryogenic vault, its inhabitants preserved in stasis. The warrior's reaction was immediate and visceral. It let out a sound that was part roar, part sob, its massive frame trembling with emotion. Alara placed a hand on its arm, her own eyes filled with tears. "You found them," she whispered. "They're safe." The vault was carefully excavated, its inhabitants revived with the help of the council scientists. They were the last survivors of the warrior civilization, their faces filled with wonder and disbelief as they emerged into a galaxy far different from the one they had known. The warrior stood among them, its presence a source of comfort and strength. For the first time in centuries, it was not alone. The council declared the mission a success, their skepticism replaced by a grudging respect. The warriors' people were given a new home, a planet where they could rebuild and thrive. The warrior itself chose to remain with them, its duty as a protector fulfilled at last. But before it departed, it turned to Alara, its eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," it said, its voice resonating deep within her soul. "You have given me peace." Alara smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You gave me hope," she replied, "and you reminded us all that even the most feared beings can change." As the warrior disappeared into the horizon, Alara felt a sense of closure. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, but it was also a place of possibility. She had faced the unknown and emerged stronger for it. And though the journey had been long and difficult, she knew that it was only the beginning. The stars above shimmered with a newfound brightness, their light a reminder of the bonds that connected all beings. Alara turned to Yarok, who stood beside her, his expression one of quiet admiration. "What now?" he asked. Alara took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Now," she said, "we build a future worth protecting."